This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi. We are learning Sefer Zephania, which is in the Trei Asar. We're in Perek Beis. Last week we learned something remarkable, and that is the ultimate fate of Moav. We know that Moav had a tremendous comeback, that Moav not only entered our people, not only did we marry from Moav, but David HaMelech ended up coming from Moav. But amazingly, and because when we were being exiled during Bayis Rishon, Moav mocked us. They said, "What are you crying? You're upset you're leaving Israel? You're just going back to Bavel. You come from Bavel anyway. You're just going to where you came from." Right? So they jeered. They poked at us. "Why are you upset? You come from Bavel." So what do we tell Moav? You go back to where you came from also. Where did Moav come from? Sodom. So ultimately Moav will be destroyed like Sodom and Amorah for their comments to us, and they're jeering us and they're mocking us. So in Perek Beis, Pasuk Tes, Lachein, Chai Ani Noam Hashem Tzvakos. I swear by my life, says Hashem, Elokei Yisrael, Ki Moav Kistoim Tiyeh. Moav will be like Sodom, Uvnei Ammon Ka'amorah. Ammon will be like Amorah. By the way, Amorah was destroyed more than Sodom because nobody was saved from Amorah. Mimeshak Charol. Mimeshak Charol. The sound of the thistles. Umichrei Melach, and a plot of salt. Ushmama, and desolation ad olam. She'eris Ami, the remnant of my people, Yivazum, will plunder them. B'yeser Goy, and the remnant of the nation Yinchalam. So, this is just to get you back into what we learned last week. Zois lahem, this ultimately will be for them tachas go'inam, because of their arrogance. We pointed out of all the terrible things that they did, what they are most accountable for are not their actions and not their sins of avodah zarah, gilei arayos, and shvichas damim, but ultimately they are more accountable for their midah ra, and their midah ra is their gaiva. The Malbim points out, even though they have gimel pisham chamurim, which is avodah zarah, gilei shvichas damim, but their punishment is more for their mockery and for their arrogance. Noira Hashem aleim, God. Ki cherfu, because they blasphemed, they shamed, vayagdilu, and they magnified it. Alam Hashem tzvakos. Noira Hashem aleim, God will show His dominance over them. Ki raza, He will weaken eis kol elokei haaretz, all the gods of the earth, v'yishtachvu lo, and they will bow to him. Ishmi mekayma, each man from his place. Kol iye hagoyim, all the islands of the nations. Gam atem kushim, also you kushim, chalalei charbi hema, they will be slain by my sword. Okay, so now we move on from Moav, and now we discuss the fate of another people, and that is, we're going to speak about the Kushim. Now, who are the Kushim? The Kushim are from Cush. What do they have with Klal Yisrael? Well, they also, Rashi says, Kishagalu Sham Yisrael Me'ever Lenare Cush. When the Jews were exiled there, they too taunted us. The Radak says, Gam atem Kushim, Amar atem This is a very unusual pasuk, because the pasuk moves from second person to third person. Gam atem Kushim, you too Kushim, Chalalei Charbi, slain of my sword, Hema, they will be. It should say you will be, because the beginning of the pasuk is talking to them in second person. Gam atem, also you. So it should say Chalalei Charbi atem. Why does it switch to Hema? Says Radak, Amar atem v'yamar Hema, ki chein minhag mikra. This is the custom of Chamel Kaimais. This is the custom of Tanakh, to move from second person to third person. Kamai kulam tashuvu uvau. This is a common practice. Or the Ibn Ezra gives another alternative reading. Again, the question is, why does the pasuk switch from second person to third person? Atem is you, Hema is them. Says the Ibn Ezra, Kederach kulam tashuvu uvayu na. Like the way of all of them, they will return and come. B'hayaroyu sheyoymar kulchem kacha. Hayaroyu sheyoymar chalei charbe atem. So, in other words, the Ibn Ezra is bothered by this question. Why does it move from second person to third person? To which he says, he quotes an obscure commentary. The name of the commentary is Yefes. The Ibn Ezra quotes V'Yefes Amar, not Hema. Don't read it Hema, but Ki Hema. B'chisaron Chaf. It's really missing a Chaf. V'hatam ala mayavim v'hamaynam haniskam. In other words, you read the pasuk like this: Gam atem kushim, you too kushim, chalei charbi, you will be slain by the sword. Read it, kahema, like them. Who's the them? Amaynam mayav. You will be slain by the sword like them. Okay. V'yet yadai, God will stretch out His hand. God will stretch out His hand. Out Safain. Against the north, v'ya'avedes Ashur, and they'll destroy Ashur. V'yasem es Ninveh, and he will make Ninveh l'shmama, to desolation. Tzia, an arid land, kamidbar, like the desert. So now we move on from the Kushim. The Kushim only get one pasuk. We move on from the Kushim and we turn to the north.
Can I ask you a question, Rabbi? By the Ammon and Moab, it said that they were haughty, right? That was the reason. But by Kushim, Pasuk doesn't tell us why.
The Malbim says the reason for the Kushim is Gam. Their punishment is included in the word Gam. And the explanation is included in the word Gam. How's that? Gam atem cherpasam. They also, in other words, also doesn't just mean they'll also be destroyed, but they're also guilty of that. Yes. By the way, the gam is a very important word, because we know in Shoshanas Yaakov we say v'gam charvoina zochor latoiv. V'gam charvoina zochor latoiv. So what's v'gam charvoina zochor latoiv? Because charvoina, when he introduces comments, he introduced it with Gam. He said, Gam, hinei ha'etz. So we say, Charvona was really a bad guy. But Gam Charvona, the word Gam that he said, that's Zocher La'atov. That you remember for the good. Okay. So now, V'yet yadai al Safain. He will extend his hand to the north. Who's in the north? So the Navi says, V'ya'abedes Ashur. He'll destroy Ashur. V'yasem es Ninveh l'shmama. He will make Ninveh desolate. Tzia, arid, kamidbar. He will extend his... Well, let's try to put that into historical context. Ninveh did tshuva, huh? When did they do tshuva? Times of Yaina. When did Yaina live? Here we're learning about the ultimate destruction of Ninveh, la'asid lavai. La'asid lavai. Now,
we don't know about Ninveh, where it is, who it is today.
Ninveh is the capital of Assyria. So, where is Assyria? Probably Syria is not too far. Well, Assyria as an empire doesn't exist. The Assyrian Empire doesn't exist. Where is it located? It's in the north. So simply this pasuk is saying, V'yet yadei al Safain, he'll extend his hand to the north, V'yabedes Ashur, and he'll destroy Ashur. V'yasem es Ninveh l'shmama, he will make Ninveh into desolation, Tzia kamidbar.
Here it says, it doesn't describe who it is, but it says, Ninveh was more than 500 miles northeast of the land of Judah.
Okay, so north is definitely correct. Rashi says it's near Bavel. However, the Radak translates it a little bit differently. Look in the Radak. The Radak says, what's V'yet yadai al Safain? Ze Bavel. This refers to Bavel, Shehi Mizrachis Tzfainis Eretz Yisrael, which is northeast. Now, it is true that Bavel is northeast, But if you look at a map, nobody would ever say Bavel is east of Eretz Yisrael. Nobody would ever say it's north. Bavel is due east. Practically, it's maybe a little bit north. In fact, in the Gemara, whenever it says something happened in Eretz Yisrael, it always says B'Marava. What's Marava? In the west. Right? That means Eretz Yisrael is west of Bavel. It doesn't say B'Daroima Idmar. Right? So why would Bavel be referred to as the north? And in the Navi Yirmiyah also, Bavel is called the north, like in the pasuk Mitzafain Tipasach Hara. From the north, evil will start. That's a prophecy about the impending Churban Bayis Rishon through the Babylonians. So we find this idea that even though really Bavel is due east, it's called the north. Why is that? So Yaakov Emden says because even though Bavel is east, the way to travel from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael is you come in through the north. Because there are mountains, because there are rivers in between, you have the Euphrates, and you have other natural barriers. The ancient travel route was from north to south, even though Bavel was really east. Okay, so according to Radak, north is referring to Bavel. V'yabed es Ashur, and they will make Nineveh desolation and arid. V'ravtzu v'soicha, and they will dwell in it. Adorim.
Ashur was an empire, right? Was Nineveh just
the Syrian Empire. What?
Ashur was an empire, the Syrian Empire, right?
Yeah.
Nineveh was just a city.
Was the capital city. Nineveh was the capital.
The capital of Ashur.
Nineveh was the capital of Ashur. The Rav Tzuvasecha Adarm, herds will lie in it. In other words, it will be so desolate, it will not be suitable for man's habitation. Kol chai soigai, all the wild animals of the nations. Now, even though the word chaysa is usually referring to wild animals, but sometimes it means cattle, and that's what it means over here. Rashi says, Kol behemois hagayim. What kind of animals? Gam koas, gam kipoid. So koas is an owl. Kipoid, I believe in modern Hebrew, kipod is a porcupine. However, that's not what it means over here. Kipod over here means a bittern. Now I have no idea what a bittern is, other than the fact that Rashi says it's a type of bird. What kind of bird? I don't know. The kind that flies. So Rashi says v'kipod oifos. Oifos.
But here it says porcupine night owl.
The porcupine night owl? Maybe. See, so I think in modern Hebrew,
these birds are mentioned together in Isaiah as the denizens of wastelands.
Exactly. These are birds that hang out in a chorba. So
maybe it's an owl who has
sharp. I don't know. In Hebrew, in modern Hebrew, it's a porcupine. That's not what it means over here. But Kaftaireha, in her capitals, Kaftaireha Yalino, they will lodge. Rashi says Polmush Sheberosh Hagag. Like you have the dome on the top of an important building. Koil Yeshoirer Bachaloin. Song, the voice will sing from the window. What kind of song will they sing from the window? These are birds that will cry out from the window. Choyrev Basaf. Sword will come out of the doorpost. Desolation will be in the doorpost. Rashi says, Hachurban Yia Nikar B'Safei Habayis. Destruction will be recognizable in the doorpost of the house. In other words, the doorpost will corrode and rot. The Targum says, Charavu Sara, the gates will corrode. Utulala Sataru, Ki Arza Era. All the cedar wood will be removed. Rashi says, the birds will be chirping from the window. In other words, it will be so desolate. Usually when a house is unoccupied, all the birds congregate around the house, make lodging on the walls of the house. On the words, Ki arza era, the cedar wood will be bared. Ki arazeha akar. The arazim, the cedar, will be uprooted. V'shoresh, the word ara means to be uprooted, like in the pasuk, aru. Some translate it, the roof will collapse. Okay. Zeus. Zeus. On the word Zeus, you have two trop. You have a Tusha Gedola and you have a Gershayim. Why did this happen? Ha'ir ha'aliza, the exulting city that formerly exulted, ha'yosheves avetach, that dwelt confidently. Ha'imra b'vava, she used to say in her heart, Ani va'afsiyoid. You ever hear that expression? Ani va'afsiyoid. Ani va'afsiyoid means the world revolves around me. Ani I va'afsiyoid, and there's nothing else. There's still people who say that. Ani va'afsiyoid. It's me, and that's it. This city, Nineveh, you say, Ei choysa l'shama. How did it become so desolate? Mar beitz l'chai, a resting place for the wild animals. Kol oiver aleh, anyone who passes by her, Yishroik will whistle. Yaniya yada will wave his hand. In other words, in astonishment of the complete destruction and devastation of the city of Nineveh, the capital of Ashur. So Rabbi say this Perek Beis concludes with the downfall of Ammon, Moav, Cush, and Ashur. Now we go on to speak about Yerushalayim. In the final parak of Zephania, we go on to speak about the holy city of Yerushalayim. The last 20 psukim here. Well, let us begin. Hay, wo, moira'a v'negala, ha'ir hayoina. Difficult pasuk. Whoa, moira'a. One would think the word moira'a would mean fear. However, Rashi translates it differently. Rashi translates it as filthy. So how does the word moira mean filthy? Vinigala, polluted. Ha'ir hayoina, the dove-like city. What's this talking about? Says Rashi, Hay moira vinigala, woe, the filthy and dirty city. Ad achshav diber beninveh. Till now we spoke about Nineveh. V'achshav choyzer al Yerushalayim. And now we go back to Yerushalayim. Heavy shetehei lovaz. It will be polluted. Uleschi keroyi. V'tehei megayeles, and it will be defiled b'tzachan avayna, in the stench of avayin. So Rashi translates the word moira as filthy. Till now we spoke about Nineveh. Now we talk about Yerushalayim, that it will be despised with the smell of sin. How does that fit into the word moira'ah? Moira'ah kemai morasai. There's a part of a bird called the mora. What's the mora of the bird? The moira of the bird is the bird's crop. What's a crop? The crop is one of the stomachs of the bird that houses the refuse. In other words, it's associated with dirtiness. What?
With poop.
Thank you. So
that's a technical term.
So Moira is referring to the shirish is Moira, the crop of the animal, and Rashi learns this is referring to Yerushalayim's dirtiness. Why is the city called the city of the pigeon? A pigeon is considered a foolish animal. It's considered an animal that doesn't have a lave, doesn't have a mind. That's how Rashi translates it.
He doesn't say it. Says Mara could also mean rebellious. Come from Mara.
Let's see the Ibn Ezra. Okay, the Ibn Ezra says, "Hay Moira, Amar Yefes Kamay Noira." Fearsome. What does that have to do with anything? The Marikar explains. It used to be fearsome. Shemayra Haisa Mufelas Al Ha'umais. The former fearsome city. Others touch it a little bit differently. Mayra is a lashon of insulted. Like Loisainu Ishas Amisai. The Radak says, Hay Mayra, says Radak. The insulted city. In other words, it's a lashon of loisainu ishas amisai. Lo yishama b'kol. Now, if you still have your Abarbanels, which I hope I do, the Abarbanel has an interesting take on this whole thing. A little bit different than the other Mefarshim. I'm not sure if you have it. It's page Kuf Ayin Tes. I don't know if we made copies of that. Do you have that? Kuf Ayin Tes? Well, Rashi learns this is talking about the faults of Yerushalayim in the times of the first Beis HaMikdash. And the greatness of Yerushalayim la'asir lavai. However, according to the Barbanel, this parak is discussing and describing the greatness of Klal Yisrael in the times of the second Beis HaMikdash. He says, Zeu derech Rashi Rebbe Ezra b'Haradak Ish lo nedar. Because until now, we heard Nevuah about the Churban of Yehuda and Yerushalayim from the beginning of the Sefer until the pasuk Bikshu es Hashem Kolan Be'aretz, and then we learned about the destruction of the Ummah Ha'olam. And this pasuk is going back to the first topic to speak about Yerushalayim and the Churban Arishain. However, it says Radak Ve'ein Kein Daiti. This is not in my opinion. After the Navi tells us about the first Beis HaMikdash destruction, and it talks about Hashem remembering us during the second Beis HaMikdash, this Parsha is coming to be Meyayed and coming to predict what will happen during Bayis Sheni and our greatness and our glory. And the Abarbanel reads the word Mayra, a lashon of fear. Okay. Pasuk Beis. Leishama b'kol. They did not listen to the voice. They didn't listen to the voice of Hashem. Leilakcha musar. They did not take musar. What musar did they not take? Says the Mitzudais. Mima shaba al aseres hashvatim b'gmol havai. In other words, when they saw the destruction of the 10 tribes, they didn't learn from that. B'Hashem lo yivatacha. They did not place their faith in God. Instead, they sought help from other countries, from Mitzrayim. El Eloheha lo kareva. To her gods, she did not approach. What is this talking about? The Malbim says she didn't listen to the voice of the teachers and the Nevi'im to turn to the Torah in an intellectual, through intellectual ha'ara, and she did not take musar to return to Hashem out of yiras ha'onesh. So she did not return intellectually, and she did not return emotionally from the punishment. She did not trust in God that Hashem is the Borei Olam. In other words, the Malbim says, why the repetition? B'Hashem lo yivatacha el Elokeha lo kareva. It's repetitive. Just say they didn't. Why twice? B'Hashem lo yivatacha el Elokeha lo kareva. The Malbim says that there are two facets of the Rebbeinu Shalom. One is that He's Creator, that's the Yud Kei Vav Kei, and the other is that He's Mashkiach, Mashgacha Pratis, and that's El Eloheha lo kareva. Sareha v'kirba. Her princes are in her midst. Aroya shoyagim are like roaring lions. Her leaders in her midst, the ruthless leaders, are like roaring lions. They're terrorized people. Mitzuda says, Sareha asher b'kirba ma'ayimim ala'am. They frighten the people because sha'agasim with the sound of their cry. Shoifteha, her judges, Ze'evei Erev, are like the wolves of the evening, Lo Garmu Laboiker. What does it mean, Lo Garmu Laboiker? The wolves of the evening hastily eat all their prey at night, Lo Garmu Laboiker, Lo Yeshiru Afat Samois. They don't even leave bones, Legareim Laboiker, to break in the morning. They don't even leave over the bones. So what is this analogy to lions and like wolves? No? What do you say? Why are we comparing the leaders to like lions and like wolves? What is the analogy? The Malbim says like this.
Like the elite. So that's noble or president. They're considered like lion. That's how a leader is often described, right? They're the king of the jungle. So this is the leader of the nation.
Mm-hmm.
But they prey on everybody below them.
The Malbim crystallizes this analogy, and that the Navi is describing 4 types of leaders. The Sarim are like lions. A lion has no shame. When a lion is hungry, it roars. The fact that everybody knows that it's about to tear someone apart, it's good with it. It's the king of the jungle, and it just rips it apart, and whatever it doesn't want it leaves there. It's not embarrassed to leave over a remnant. However, the judges, they are not as proud, so they take shoichad b'tzina. They're like wolves who rip in the evening, in the darkness. Nobody sees them. And in the morning, there's nothing left. The wolves even grind up the bones so that there should be no remnant. So the shoftim, who are all sleazy, and they don't want to leave over any remnant, they're like wolves who eat the bones, and they don't even leave the skeleton.
That's like worse than a lion. The lion leaves something over for somebody else.
Well, at least they leave over evidence because they're not ashamed, they're not embarrassed, they're not trying to cover it up. Nivieha, her prophets, Poichazim, are lowly, Kale Hadas. Anshe Boigdois, treacherous men. So her prophets are treacherous men. The false prophets. The false prophets. They're treacherous. The Metzudas Tzion says Kale Hadas. The Metzudas David says Nevi'ei Habal, it's referring to. They're treacherous men. Now the problem is that if they're men, it should say Boigdim, not Boigdois. Why does it say Boigdois? Kaihaneh, her priests, Chilulu Kodesh, profane that which is sacred. Chamsu Torah, they steal the Torah. What does it mean they steal the Torah? The Torah belongs to the people, and if the Kohanim do not paskin shilas and teach the Torah, they're stealing the Torah from the people. It's Torah tziva lanu Moshe, Mayrasha Kilas Yaakov. Who owns the Torah? Every Jew owns the Torah, and if the leaders and the teachers don't want to give it over, they're robbing, they're stealing. Now what does it mean the prophets are lowly anoshim boy gedois? See the Malbim. Says the Malbim, Nevi'ah, heim poichzim v'reikim are empty. Veim anshe boy gedois, heim anoshim lenoshim ha-boy gedois. They are men to traitorous women. In other words, the prophets were being mezaneh with women. The boigdos are not going on the Nevi'im. The boigdos were going on the Nevi'im's mistresses. And l'noshim ha-boigdos.
Rabbi, what's worse? A judge that takes shochad, or a navi that's a false navi? False navi is chayav misa, right?
Yes.
A judge that takes bribery, all right, so you hakam with makas, you collect.
Yeah.
But he's not chayav misa. But a false navi is chayav misa. You know, worse than a judge. You hear it. I don't know if they're doing it.
I don't know, right? We don't know necessarily that we're listing it in any order of how terrible they are. And the kohanim, who it's incumbent upon them to guard the mikdash, they sanctify what is holy. And not only that, but they issue improper psak. Okay. However, this will be the last pasuk. Hashem tzadik b'kirba. God is righteous in their midst. La yasa avla. He does not commit treachery. Ba'boiker. Each morning, mishpata yitain. He gives judgment. La'ar to light. Lo nedar. It's not withheld. But the wrongdoer knows no shame. What is this talking about? Let's just see Rashi. Rashi says, Hashem tzadik. Hashem hishver shchinasoi b'kirbam. Despite all the treachery that was taking place, God nevertheless resided His holy presence in them. And God cannot look at their bad deeds. Ki tzadiku. God is righteous, vein avlo lefanav, there's no iniquity before him. Mishpata yitain la'ar, noisein la'ar, dan din emes amitai. He gives to light a true justice. We'll have to see what this means. But the wrongdoer does not know shame. Those who judge improperly, they don't put to their hearts to be embarrassed from the tzaddik who lives among them. So we have to try to understand, what does it mean God issues forth daily justice? What kind of daily justice? Let's see the Malbim. Hashem tzaddik v'kerba. Kulam ra'am v'chataim. They're all evil. V'oisei avla. Rak tzaddik echad nimtza b'ir. There's only one righteous entity in the city. V'hu Hashem. Hanimtza b'kerba. Hu lo yasa avla. And even though the Risham distort justice, hu yitain mishpatei v'chol boiker la'ar asher lo nedar.
I mean, there wasn't really even one judge who was a tzaddik, but didn't take shofar? Not even one? The whole city?
And what does it mean? God issues His justice daily? Asher lo nedar ve'enoi nifsek la'olam. Ki meir tamid u'moitzi ha'mishpar la'ar tamid. V'yoroi sheyashuvu boishes b'mei Hashem. Hatzadik hanimtza b'kirbai. They should have been full of shame because of God who's still with them. But no, they don't know any shame. They don't know God. And therefore they're not ashamed of their deeds. And they have no fear of God, who despite their iniquity continues to administer true justice among them. Okay, Rabbi Sai, I wish you...
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.